The last honest thing done that night was locking the front door behind and leaving the porch light on like a breadcrumb for the person who wouldn't return the same anymore. From the street, the house looked like a photograph of happiness. Two windows glowing, a fern that insisted on living, a doormat that said welcome home and meant it, even when the one stepping over it didn't deserve to be welcomed. Inside, Liam was bent over his laptop, mouthing numbers, the way he always did when nerves were chewing on him. He glanced up, smiled with half his mouth, and asked if there would be food at the fundraiser or should he order Thai just in case. The question was soft, ordinary, and it followed down the hall like a promise it couldn't keep. The Midtown Arts Gala was a chandelier pretending to be a night sky. Velvet, glass, laughter the temperature of champagne. The orchestra sawed open nostalgia to pour it over everyone's shoulders, and strangers turned into confidences under dim gold light. It was the sort of room that makes choices feel distant and consequences imaginary. Enter Adrian Vale, photographer to the doubting, the kind of beautiful that happens when mischief learns patience. His work hung along the west wall, storms caught mid-breath, bodies learning their borders in light and shadow, a skyline at 4:13 a.m. that looked like the city had confessed and forgiven itself. He stood in a charcoal jacket and a shirt the exact white of untroubled snow. He noticed before being noticed. "You're standing like someone running while standing still," he said, smile angled, eyes frank enough to be rude if they weren't so curious. It was laughable, the accuracy, and yet it landed with the tenderness of someone handing a hot mug into cold hands. "I'm married," came out of the mouth as defense and biography, the syllables crouching behind the wedding band like it could do the rest of the talking. He nodded as if accepting terms and slid nowhere closer. Restraint is its own seduction when the room expects the opposite. "Then let's talk about photos." He walked through his pieces like they were small doors. Here, a fisherman who never stopped loving Dawn, even when Dawn forgot his name. There, a woman dancing with a ghost she didn't realize belonged to her future. The commentary wasn't slick so much as practiced honesty. Vulnerability as a lens, not a trick. The orchestra shifted to a slow burn. The floor hummed like a held breath. A benefactor toasted the city and meant the version of it that could afford evenings like this. The glass in hand stayed full. Conversation emptied the head like a tide. "Ever been photographed by someone who didn't want anything from you?" he asked. The laugh surprised them both. "That's not possible," was said, but staying to argue made it truer than intended. He didn't touch, he didn't flirt. He did that thing only artists and liars do well, made space feel deliberate. At the far end of the room, beneath a piece called after, he reached for nothing and said, "Sometimes the frame tells the truth the subject cannot," which was either about pictures or people or both. The phone buzzed, "Liam, tie or no tie?" The word yes was typed and deleted. Then, "Don't wait up, love, home late." It was a kindness and a misdirection, which is just betrayal rehearsing in lowercase. On the balcony, the city lifted its lit throat. Wind lifted hair off the neck and put new thoughts there. He stepped out beside, the two of you aligned to the skyline like conspirators and strangers. No touch, not yet. Only that magnetic rattle of restraint that makes every breath sound like it means something. "Tell me the thing you don't say out loud," he said, too easy. "I miss being looked at without being tallied." The answer arrived before permission to give it did. It nearly undone the night. He exhaled a laugh that was mostly ache. "Then stop letting rooms total you." The music halved. The moon shoved its shoulder through a cloud. Somewhere a glass shattered and everyone pretended it was an accident. When leaving, he didn't ask for a number. He told where he would be: Saturday dawn, South Pier, gulls loud as gossip, coffee that tasted like penance. "If you come, it's for the light," he said. Nothing else. A lie beautiful enough to be believed long enough to hurt. In the ride home, the city smeared by like a confession written with rain on glass. The porch light was still on. Keys were very loud in midnight doors. Liam slept with the laptop still open, the time menu tab like a small flag of effort. A kiss was placed against his temple and it didn't wake him. Betrayal loves that about sleep. The mirror asked for a story the face did not want to tell. Fingers spun the ring, and for one uncertain, honest second, the thought arrived. Keep the promise or keep the feeling. Then the lights were turned off and both were kept, which is how breaking starts, by trying to hold two truths that refuse each other. Dawn made a cathedral of the pier, gulls heckling the shore, the horizon laying out its quiet ultimatum in pink. The cold held the bones like a question. Adrian sat on the railing with two coffees, content to let the light arrive without being asked. "This isn't a good idea," said the words to the air as though it could vote. "It's the only honest thing we'll do today," he said, not arguing, not disagreeing, simply setting down boundaries like sand lines. He handed the camera. "Point at what you're willing to lose." It was absurd and precisely the right assignment. The lens made choices necessary. Necessity made self-delusion expensive. A fisherman with a grin full of storms, a child discovering the ocean, is a mirror that refuses to tell the same truth twice. A woman in a yellow coat teaching a dog patience with pockets. The shutter clicked like a heart counting. The cold was a blessing, sensation clear enough to worship. When he took the camera back, the look was the organism that happens when admiration breeds too fast in the wild. "You see the ache under pretty," he said. "Most people won't admit there's an under." "What do you want?" was asked, blunt. He didn't answer. He lifted the camera and relieved the face of its practiced angles. Click, the mouth softened, click. The shoulders forgot the world, click. The ring flashed and made a small thunder under the ribs. Coffee went cold between them. Conversation went warm. The sun climbed like a stubborn truth up a ladder of cloud. He didn't ask for a number again. He asked for a story and made the morning long enough for an answer. It came out in good faith. The meet-cute that had been a steady friendship wrapped in a marriage proposal. The first apartment with cabinets that moaned an apology each time opened. The miscarriage no one talked about because grief embarrassed the family. The ring felt heavier by the time finished speaking. He listened in that unfashionable way that makes the speaker want a hand over more than words. "You are trying to live a life that keeps you from ever being the reason someone else cries," he said, voice quiet with its own history. "That is kindness, and it is cowardice, depending on the day." "What do you know about my days?" The defense was polite because he had earned that. He looked at the ocean. "I know what people shoot when they're starving." A wave struck the pilings hard enough to make both step back. The sound folded the conversation's edges. He put the camera against the chest lightly, the weight intimate and innocent both. "Keep it for a week. Pay me in photos." "Why?" "Because frames don't lie the same way people do. And because I like the way you look at mornings." Honesty was suddenly a dangerous weather. There was no kiss, just proximity like a lit match near a curtain. The walk back felt like leaving a room that would be returned to as someone else. At home, Liam had cooked something that tried to be French toast and landed squarely in comfort. He talked about a client merger, about maybe taking a weekend trip to the lake like the old days, about the way winter held the city close by the collar. The camera on the counter turned the kitchen into a confession booth. That night, insomnia braided itself into the sheets. The camera's strap had a shadow that looked like invitation. A message buzzed from an unknown number, Adrian's gallery sending a general thank you. It was nothing. It was everything. The reply typed and erased 3 times, then the phone placed face down as if that could blind fate. A week of mornings documented like a dare. Fire escapes, coffee steam, a woman crying into a bus window reflection that refused to cry back. The city yielded angles the way a lover yields, slowly, with test and reward. At work, Juliet, who believed gossip was how truth learned to breathe, noticed something unnoticeable. "You look reprised," she said, grabbing a stapler like a microphone. "Like you're in the middle of a plot twist and it knows how it ends." Laughed it off and changed the subject to deadlines. The deadline inside did not change subject. Adrian's notes arrived in a neat, infuriating handwriting. "Your lines love other people's loneliness. What would happen if you pointed them at your own?" It shouldn't have made hands shake. It did. A second meeting was a convenience that pretended to be an accident. At a pop-up show he curated in a warehouse that used to be a boathouse before the river decided everyone had to move. Music low, lights suspicious of flattery. He stood at a respectful distance and asked the question again without asking it at all. "Come to the roof," he said, already walking. The stairs were concrete and history. The roof was the city's heart in a metal ribcage. "I won't kiss you up here," he said, the modesty trumpeting louder than any boast could. "It would be too cinematic. We'd owe the moment a lifetime we can't afford to pay." It almost saved both. Almost. The laugh that escaped was a white flag with lipstick on it. Wind made a crown of the hair. He took 1 step closer, and the body took 2 steps toward him without moving. "Say no," he offered, palms open, almost priestly. "Say no, and I will be a gentleman about it for the rest of my life." "Teach me how to shoot a person without making them hate you," was what was said instead, which was yes in the language of wanting. He exhaled relief like he'd been underwater since the pier. Lessons were a choreography too intimate to be neutral. Focus on an exhale. Don't apologize for taking up their time. Ask for who they are, not what they do. Each direction was a touch without touching. Each correction was permission. When the first raindrops fell, the city smelled like itself. He moved to cover the camera with his jacket, and the hands met over equipment like a cliché with a mortgage. Fingers found fingers and stayed there, stunned by how obvious fate can be when it's done waiting. The almost kiss hurt more than any kiss would have. It was restraint bitten through. Pulled back first, breathing a yes-shaped no. He nodded, eyes fierce with agreement and grief. "You don't owe me a ruin," he said. "I won't ask you for one." It was a vow too generous, which is to say dangerous. On the walk down, bumped shoulders, both of you precise about pretending it was the building's fault. In the gallery again, Juliet appeared where good sense should have stood. She clocked the static in the air and filed it under later. At home, Liam had circled the weekend on the calendar in a pen that didn't quite match the ink of the previous circles. Cabins open, firewood's a promise, we could be quiet together for a while. He kissed knuckles where the ring had warmed the skin. The body was a map of guilty countries. Snow made the road choose a single story and stick to it. The cabin was as advertised. A timber thought about carefully, a fireplace that respected both wood and silence, a lake toughening into ice. Liam's relief was a thing that moved furniture by itself. "Let's be boring," he said, in the tone of a man who remembers when boring was luxury. Puzzles, soup, a blanket that forgave everything. The phone reception was honest-to-God medieval. It should have been a blessing. It held for 30 hours. Laughter like the kind babysitters remember. Flirtation wrapped in old in-jokes that still fit if breath was held. The body remembered the script. The heart forgot its lines. The storm came sudden and righteous. The power went out. The fireplace performed ancient miracles. In the light of a dozen small candles, Liam stared long and steady and said, "Are we okay?" without context. As if okay were a country that could be pointed at on any map. "Yes," was said, a white lie that believed it was a tourniquet. He smiled carefully, like a man stepping around a sleeping dog that had bitten once. "Because I can do hard. I just need hard to be honest." The heat fled the room like a decision. A tear made itself without permission. He saw it. He always saw what tried not to be seen. "Tell me if there's someone else sending you weather." The phrase was so gentle it broke something that had been braced for violence. This was the place to confess. The storm offered cover. The candles offered absolution. The mouth offered no, like a reflex taught to children crossing streets alone. He nodded the way people nod at a verdict they anticipated but still hoped to out-argue. He reached into the couch cushions and pulled out the camera strap that had stowed away in the overnight bag. "You packed this," he said, not accusing, not kind, just correct. Silence is a weapon only trained hands should carry. It was set down. He drew in breath that scraped its way across the room. "I want you happy even if happy costs me my pride," he said. "But I won't survive a slow leaving. If you have to go, make it clean." It was not a dare. It was a mercy request. "Liam," the name was a prayer, and prayer is often bargaining disguised as worship. "Don't decide tonight," he said. "Decide when the lights are on and the dishes need doing. Decide in daylight or don't. Just don't decide here where everything feels like a movie, because movies lie." Wisdom, wearing flannel and a hurt smile. He held through the night like a dam. In the morning, sunlight made the dust look choreographed. The ring was hot as a brand. The decision wasn't made. Which is to say, the decision was made to let something else make it. Back in the city, grievance found a home in momentum. The inbox offered ordinary emergencies. Juliet sent a single text, "Everything okay?" It wasn't a question built for phones. Adrian's message was a doorway. "New series, open studio tonight. If you come, come as you are. If you don't explain." It was considerate to the point of cruelty. The studio smelled like developer, risk, and something floral trying to apologize. Black and white portraits large enough to argue with. People caught mid-truth. In the corner. A photograph not hung yet, leaning against the wall. Her at the pier, mouth unbraced, ring a flare of honesty. He had titled it Appetite. "Take it down," was said, stepping backward like from a cliff that had been put in the wrong place. He blinked, then nodded, then didn't move. "I wanted your permission to never show it. Needed to prove to myself I could choose your life over my work." The room blurred. It wasn't tears, it was consequence changing the prescription. "Do you love me?" came out before consultation with counsel. He breathed in like the question had altitude. "I love the you who shows up when you forget to be good," he said. "That person is braver than either of us know what to do with. What happens if I choose him? Then I make a body of work about restraint and don't sell it." He smiled, a ruin with good lighting. The kiss happened because it had been happening in imagination long enough to collect interest. Soft at first, debt-paid softness, then hunger, then the sort of terrible clarity that makes time beg for a dark room. Hands mapped, hunger confessed, restraint remembered late. They stopped before the kind of stopping that can't be undone. Both shaking, both bright with it. "We are not better than our vows," he said, grief-laced and adult. "We are only more honest about where they pinch." Leaving was an act of fidelity to the wrong moment. The city applauded with traffic. On the corner near home, Liam stood holding Take Out the Color of Forgiveness. He looked at the mouth and read it like sheet music. His jaw worked around a word that didn't want to be seen outside. "Tell me one true sentence," he said. So did. "I kissed him." It landed and then kept landing. He closed his eyes and nodded like a man counting down from a number too high. "Okay?" The okay that isn't okay at all. He didn't shout. He did quiet like craft. "You told me before I found out. That matters to the part of me that keeps the lights on." He set the food down, an offering no one wanted. "Do you love him?" Silence wrote its thesis. "I don't know who I am when I'm with him," said honestly. "And that feels like relief." "Then go find out who you are," he said, and the bravery of it was a bridge he might never cross back from. "But don't come back to me with an apology made of nostalgia. I want the version of you that chooses me with both hands." The door clicked, it wasn't slammed. The quiet after was a floodplain. The phone shook in the palm. Adrian wrote, "I don't want to be the reason you break what taught you love." The reply, "That's not what you are. You're the reason I stop lying." Separation is math dressed as weather. Days divided into work, sleep, not calling. The apartment felt like a witness who had promised the truth and was keeping it too well. Juliet brought coffee and a stare. "People survive this," she said, then added, "and a lot don't, for balance. Pick a way to be brave and keep doing it." Advice isn't medicine, it's scaffolding. Still, it held. Adrian didn't call. He left a print on the doorstep. The ocean from that first morning, horizon a steady pulse. On the back, 5 words, "Decide in light, not loneliness." In therapy that had been postponed for years with the excuse of logistics, it was said out loud. "I am so afraid of the damage love can do that I have been dating cowardice and calling it kindness." The room did not break. The mouth did. Weeks folded like spare sheets. Liam sent an email with subjects and bullet points and a profound decency. Logistics for a pause, not a divorce, the word pause daring both to grow into something worth coming back to. "No promises," he wrote. "Only the work." Work was dull salvation. Mornings were honest again. The camera taught that framing does not change the thing, it changes the witness. When met with Adrian again, it was in a daylight cruel to flattery. "I am not leaving him for you," was said first. "I am leaving the version of me that thought wanting less was noble." He looked both relieved and wrecked and nodded like a prayer was being kept. "So what are we?" "Not a secret," was said, voice steady. "And not a reward. If this is anything, it's a room with every light on." His smile was smaller and truer. "I can live in that." They tried in the daylight. It was less cinematic and more difficult, which is another way to say real. Fights about shelves, about time, about the way art steals hours and calls it devotion. Kisses that didn't need violins. Hands that learned the map of ordinary. A month later, a message from Liam. "Coffee? No lawyers. No traps. Just 2 people who used to be we. Met where everything had started, under a chandelier pretending to be a sky but an afternoon when chandeliers are only glass." He looked well-loved by the work he'd been doing on himself. "I miss you, and it doesn't ruin me," he said, which felt like graduate school for the heart. "I want you happy, even here across from me." It was an absolution that didn't empty the room. "I was a coward," was said, "and I used goodness as camouflage." He nodded. "Me too. We had a kind marriage, and it still wasn't the right shape for the people we're becoming." Kindness at last did not mean returning. It meant bowing to the truth without regret. The last frame in the first show done after all this was not a face. It was a doorway at 7:12 a.m., light lying across the floor like an invitation no longer dangerous. The title was Count What You Keep. On the placard, "In gratitude to the man who asked for daylight and the one who handed me a frame." There is no neat moral here, only arithmetic. Love plus courage minus pretending, divided by time. The remainder is a life honest enough to sit with its own weather. The porch light still goes on at dusk. Sometimes it shines for the version of self that's still walking home. And sometimes for someone else. Both are true, both are kept. Both are true, both are kept.